For those of you who do not know my story, I too was in a toxic narcissistic relationship, a 10-year relationship, and most toxic and narcissistic relationships are long-term, and we'll go into that another day as to why that is. But over the years, I too became very close, very bonded with the toxic ex's family, and you do feel a sense of betrayal. You do feel a sense of abandonment because you consider them family, right? You share a lot of memories together, a lot of good times together. And when things happen, when things go south within the relationship, not that you expect them to turn on their own family, but you expect them to support you and understand where you're coming from. And it's very hard to deal with the fact that they start to present as if you were the problem, as if you were the reason everything is falling apart, and that you're making a big deal out of nothing, especially when you choose to actually disconnect from the ex. That is something I experienced. From my background, my parents are Caribbean. So living in the US, a lot of my family was out of the country. I also lost my mom at a young age, at the age of 10. So I only had my father, I had some siblings, but everyone was pretty much either in different states or out of the country. And I was very much dependent, emotionally, I would say dependent, or emotionally connected, not dependent, but connected to my toxic ex's family. So yes, I completely understand that once you choose to disconnect from the toxic ex, you also now have to deal with, how do I deal with this confusion of, the family doesn't believe me. They think I'm the problem, especially when the problem seems so obvious. I remember explaining things to my ex's family members, and some of them would listen, trying to be polite and nice. But some of them would actually come back with feedback about things that I can change. And that's where you start to feel like you're in a twilight zone. Like, are you serious? Do you really not see, what I'm seeing? So with that said, in today's episode, I am going to go into some of the lessons that I learned, some of the changes that I had to make in order for me to be able to heal, again, not only from feeling like I failed in a relationship, but also from having to disconnect from people that I had considered family for 10 years. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to me, my name is Naila Abdullah. I'm a mental health therapist turned toxic relationship coach. And after overcoming my own experiences with toxic family and romantic relationships, I'm passionate about helping women like you heal after a toxic or narcissistic relationship so that you can go ahead and move on and break the cycle of toxic relationships for good. So if that sounds like what you need, go ahead and hit subscribe and let's get into it. So the first tip that I want to give you when you're dealing with the narcissist family believing that you're the problem is I want you to understand that narcissistic personality disorder is actually developed in childhood. You cannot be diagnosed with it in childhood. It has to wait until you become an adult. However, your experiences in your childhood is what develops this personality. So with that in mind, you want to remember that these same people that you are going to, these same family members that you are going to for support, during your experience of disconnecting from your toxic ex, these are the same people that probably contributed to the reason that your toxic ex is narcissistic in the first place, right? They are the ones that raised him. They are the ones that, nurtured his personality. And there's a good chance that the very people that you were going up to saying, help, please understand me, please believe my side, these are the same people that probably created the monster that you're dealing with today. Now, I know that may be hard to believe because when you are dealing with the family members, you may not see some of the same traits that you see in your toxic ex. One of the reasons for that is that narcissistic personality disorder evolves over time, right? They learn new tricks depending on their age, depending on their current situation. They have to learn new ways on how to target people, on how to mask their personality, when to bring it out, when not to bring it out. So when you're dealing with someone, say in their 30s and their 40s or 20s, however old your toxic ex is, that will look different for the parent that's in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And again, that is because they have to learn how to adjust. In order to continue their behavior and how they treat people, they know that the way they behaved in their 20s and 30s cannot resemble the way, cannot look the same when they're in their 60s and in their 70s, because it becomes more obvious. So even though you may have discovered what it looks like in a younger person, it takes a while, it takes a little bit of practice, and hopefully you don't have to get that much practice in this field, because this is not something fun to deal with, but it takes a little bit more experience and practice to be able to recognize it in someone older. As I've said earlier, I have experience with both toxic and narcissistic family relationships as well as romantic relationships. And one of the things that I learned from toxic and narcissistic family relationships is that toxic narcissistic parents can be very good at presenting very well-rounded, very emotionally mature, and it can look really good for years on the outside. However, when it comes to defending their toxic or narcissistic child, that is where you will see how crafty and strategic that they can be in trying to defend them. And they may not even defend them all the time. They may agree with you at some point, and some different times. However, they will always find ways to try to get you to look at yourself and say, well, maybe you can do this different, or maybe you can try this different, right? They will still try to find ways to support the narcissistic adult child. So now, with you having some of this information, some of this advice about the narcissist family believing that you're the problem, I want you to turn down the emotional part of you, turn up the logical part of you, right? If some of these family members share the same personality traits, they've nurtured these type of personality traits within your toxic ex, these are not your people. These are not your support people. Okay. And I know that may be hard because you probably have been in the relationship for a while. You share a lot of good memories together. They've been supportive of you in other ways. But keep in mind, not everyone can support you in every aspect of your life. And that means sometimes you have to turn away from them when they cannot give you what you need. Right now, this is a very vulnerable position that you're in. I remember feeling very broken myself, and you were very vulnerable, right? You were very delicate, and you have to be very protective about who you expose yourself to. It's like a newborn baby, right? When you're newborn, you come into this world, you don't have all your vaccinations. You're very susceptible, right, to catching viruses and different illnesses. So your parents have to protect you. That is the phase that you're in when you're coming out of a narcissistic or toxic relationship, right? You are very delicate. So you have to be very careful about who you expose yourself to when you're looking for support. And it's not about who you want to support you. That's one of the key things I would want you to take away from this episode, is that sometimes we are forcing people to support us because we want them to be our support. Right? We want that, but we have to be accepting of the truth, of the reality of the situation. Just because you want them to be your support, because that would feel nice, that would look like a great fairy tale situation, sometimes the people you want to support you are not equipped or are not safe to support you. And the sooner that you can accept that, the better off that you will be. The second tip that I want to give you on how to deal with when the narcissist family thinks that you're the problem, I want you to understand that what seems like dysfunction to you seems normal to others. Don't quote me on this saying, but I've heard it that what is chaos to the fly is normal for the spider. Something like that. I just read it the other day and I was like, yes, that is so true, right? So to the spider, it has its web, right? That's normal life, right? Walking on the web, creating the web. But for the fly, when the fly goes in there, it gets stuck, right? And it's just chaos, right? So I really like that saying. I don't think I quoted it properly. But bottom line is that what seems like dysfunction to you, you are coming now to the family, you are trying to explain the dysfunction, the things that are going wrong. To them, it may be normal. And it may be normal for many reasons. One, for all of us in our family, right, you're born into it, what you experience seems normal because that is your everyday life. That is something that happens all the time. The other part to it is that society tells us that we have to accept the dynamics within our family. And society and culture also teaches us that regardless of how dysfunction our family is, or when things don't seem right, we may not use the term dysfunctional, right? But we might see that certain things are not happening right. We are still taught that we have to be loyal to that. So with this second tip in mind about the narcissist family believing that you're the problem, this is one of the reasons they may believe that you were the problem, because it is easier for them to accept their relatives' behavior as normal, or at least just deal with it, rather than accepting from an outsider that this person is really that destructive. And again, that word outsider, I know that may hit hard because, again, you've probably been connected to these people for a long time. You share a lot of history with these people. Maybe they've been really good to you, but at the end of the day, you are still an outsider. And it's always easier to simply say, okay, this person is the problem, than to confront and to challenge the person that they are actually related to and that they have normalized this type of behavior. I will share with you also in my own personal experience. As I said, I've overcome toxic romantic and family relationships. I've even seen it in my own family, where I have a sibling who I consider narcissistic based on many different reasons. But I remember being trained, again, not only by society, but within other narcissists within my own family, that I can address some of the destructive behavior of the sibling, but at the end of the day, I am still supposed to support them and accept them and just deal with it. And if someone comes up to me and complain about me, I have to find a strategic way to back them up, right? And of course, that is not who I am at all anymore, but that is how I was raised. So I also understand it from the other side, where family members are taught, again, not just by society, but within the culture of the family, to just tolerate and accept the dysfunction. And that is unfortunate for them. Not everyone outgrows that. Luckily, I have, and I have seen that that is very destructive. That is very unhealthy. That is very toxic. And that is where you then become a culprit to this narcissist, targeting victims and breaking other people down, when you are pretending that it's not as bad just because society and culture says that you need to be loyal. So I want you to keep that advice in mind when you are thinking about, why does this family believe that I'm the problem? This is probably one of the reasons. The third tip that I want to give you, the third lesson that I want to give you when you ask about why doesn't the narcissist family understand me, or why do they believe that I'm the problem, is that some of the family members may genuinely be too naive to understand this personality disorder. Narcissism, or pretty much any destructive personality disorder, is very hard to believe because they are so good at being manipulative, right? So even if they see some of what you're saying, they may not understand the severity of it. They may not understand why you have to now break up the family, take the kids away, move out. Whatever it is that you're doing may seem extreme to them. They may not understand it because they may be too naive to understand it. Some people, let's be honest, don't have the knowledge behind this type of personality disorder, especially if they haven't experienced it. They also may not have the intellectual or the emotional capacity to grasp what you're trying to say. Now, with that said, knowing you and your personality, because most of us share this as empaths, and people that have been victim to this type of personality disorder, we want to immediately jump in and explain. We want to educate others on, yes, this is who they are, this is what they've done, and this is what that means. We want them to get it. We eagerly want them to get it. But it's not your responsibility. Again, you are in a vulnerable space right now, and this space may last for quite some time. You need to protect your energy. You need to protect your time. Right now, your energy needs to only go into yourself, into healing yourself, into understanding what you experienced, why you went through what you went through, and how do I get out of it in one piece. And if you have children, your energy needs to also go into them. It is not your job to explain or try to convince any naive family member, friend, whoever who does not get it. Maybe in time, over the next couple years, if they seem like they can possibly get it, maybe you can have that conversation with them, but that needs to be the least of your concern. So please don't take this tip that I'm giving you as the green light to say, okay, well, let me make them understand. Let me educate them, since they don't understand how severe this personality disorder is or how toxic this person is. That's not your job right now. So now that you have some insight as to why the narcissist family thinks that you're the problem, As you know, Naila, I don't just want to talk about what everyone else is doing that is wrong, right? We need to also look at what do I need to do next, right? Taking back control over your life. What you need to do next, my advice to you is to get to a place of acceptance that the people that you thought would be there for you cannot be there for you. The people that you wanted to support you, his family, maybe some of your friends, they may not have the capacity to support you. It may not be safe for you to try to get them to support you. Again, this is a very vulnerable space, and the little bit of energy that you have left needs to be put into you, not into relationships and seeking out support that you have to question. Are you really there for me, or are you not? And again, I've been there before. I remember months had passed after I left a toxic ex, and certain family members were reaching out. And again, as we spoke about earlier in this episode, I realized some of them did share similar personality traits, but some of them genuinely did want to reach out and see how I was doing. But because I was not sure of who was who, I had to be willing to let everybody go, because I know that I was in a vulnerable situation, and the little bit of energy that I had left, I had to put that into healing Naila. I could not afford to put that energy into trying to figure out, is this person safe? Is that person safe? You know, when they said this, you know, was that from a good place, or were they trying to manipulate me? You know, are they going to go back to the ex and say what I said? That's too much work. That's too much. That's not your responsibility. Okay, so you want to accept, you want to get to a place where you accept that some people are just not safe for you to be close to right now. Maybe years later, if you want to reach out, that's a different story. But right now, you can only afford to be connected to people that you are 100% certain of. Now, if you find it hard to disconnect from the family after learning everything we spoke about here in the episode today, the therapist in me always says there's a reason behind our decision. There's a reason behind our choices. And what we spoke about here in this episode, I think, is pretty clear. It's clear that some people cannot support us in the way they want to support us for the different reasons that we spoke about in this episode. And if it's still too hard for you to let certain people go, there's a reason for that. And that takes a little bit more work on your end to explore, why am I taking the risk? Because that's what it is. Why am I taking the risk of not preserving myself, which is a normal human or mammal, right? A mammal responsibility is self-preservation. So if I'm putting myself in a risky situation, right, that I know can break me even further, if I'm choosing to do that, then there's something is not adding up, right? There's a reason that we are choosing not to choose self-preservation, and we're choosing to take a risk that can hurt us further. And that means that there's a little bit more work that you need to do to figure out, why am I holding on to something that I know can actually break me? And if it's too much for you to figure out, then you need to reach out for support to figure out, why am I doing this? Learning these lessons and these tips that I shared with you in this episode today was really able to help me to navigate through that initial period of letting go of a narcissistic ex. And even in dealing with narcissistic family members, being able to understand that not everyone has the capacity to support you. Some people are naive. Some people are more, hold on to loyalty to family more than others. And some people actually share the same dysfunctional, destructive personality traits that I'm getting away from in the first place. So for whatever the reason is, sometimes you have to be willing to let go. And these lessons really allowed me to be able to heal through that. So if you want to learn more about some of the lessons that I got from my experiences, I go further into it in my free ebook. It's in the description link below. The mistakes that I made in toxic relationships and how you can avoid them. Again, it's free. Go ahead and click that and learn from some of my mistakes. Again, I'm not just talking about, the things that I did wrong, but it also goes into the mindset change that I need to make. Because let me say this to you. It is no coincidence that many of the people that I've worked with professionally and in my personal life share some of the same characteristics, right? And have ended up in toxic relationships, usually more than one. But even if it is one, It's no coincidence. There is something about the way that we deal with people. There is something about our mindset that has gotten us into this situation and kept us stuck there. And again, my mission here is not just to help you to get out of it and heal, but also make the necessary changes in order to make sure you don't get stuck in another situation like that again. Because you will cross more toxic people, you will cross more narcissists, right? This is not the end, but if you want to make sure that you don't end up in another relationship like that, in a long-term relationship, doesn't mean they won't cross your path and they may sneak in, but it's about not getting stuck in a situation like that again. There's certain mindset changes that we have to make. We have to understand ourselves. I think a lot of times we get so stuck on going on YouTube and going on these different social media platforms to understand narcissism, understand toxic people, manipulative people. That's just one step. The real work begins when we understand ourselves, of why did we stay stuck in that for so long. So go ahead and click that link for the free ebook so you can learn a little bit of the mindset changes that I had to make in order to help me to heal, move on, and break the cycle for good. I hope this episode was helpful for you. If it was, go ahead and hit the thumbs up so other people can find it and also benefit from it. And go ahead and subscribe so you can be notified every time a new episode goes up. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.